Okay, so today we're going to be looking at the healthy pizza in your recipe book, and we're going to be looking at it in terms of having the added fibre into the base. So what you will need to do is, first of all, you're going to use whole wheat flour, and I'm going to show you what the fibre looks like in that. So first of all, I sieve the brown flour, the whole wheat flour, into a basin, into a bowl. And I'm sieving it really just so that you can see what the fibre looks like within the flour. And I'm going to add it back into my flour so that I get the goodness. So this is the fibre, and fibre is quite coarse material, and it's actually the outside of the grain, so it's the edges of the grain that get added into the flour to increase the fibre content of the flour. So we're going to add that back in to our mixture. Then we're going to sieve the white flour. Now the fibre in this recipe will help aid your digestion, and we as adults need to have 18 grams of fibre in our diet every day. So once you have got your flour mixed in, you're going to add your other ingredients. So we need a level teaspoon of salt. You do need to make sure you measure this out. It does feel like it's quite a bit of salt, but you do need the salt to add a little bit of acid into the mixture. You also are going to be adding the yeast, and the yeast is the yeast is the bit which will help the dough to rise, but it will also help the dough to have that bread flavour, and it's the yeast that will produce carbon dioxide in the dough to help with that risen effect. We're also going to add a tablespoon of oil into our mixture. And then in order to activate the yeast, we are going to add in 125 millilitres of warm water. Now before I pour this in, you do need to understand that it's got to be warm. If it's too hot, what you'll find is that it will kill the yeast, and it won't activate. But if it is too cold, again, the yeast won't be activated either. So a good way of testing whether the water is warm, if you take your finger and pop your finger into the water, you can't feel the water because it is at body temperature, so that's ideal. So you're going to add the water into the yeast, and as soon as you do that, you will start to see the yeast bubbling up, and you can start to get that yeasty smell, and that is the activation of the carbon dioxide within the yeast. So the yeast actually starts to move and kind of activate. So you're going to take a palette knife and you're going to mix your ingredients together in your bowl to form a fairly stiff dough. Okay, so once you've mixed it to form a dough, and you can shape it with your hand in the bowl, you then can turn it out onto the work surface. And at this stage, you're going to knead your dough for a good 10 minutes. Now, the more you knead it, the more you are going to be able to create the gluten which is within the flour. And the gluten only starts to work once it has been kneaded really well and has water particles in it. So you do need to make sure that a good 10 minutes will create that gluten within the flour. And the gluten will give the pizza base a really nice stretchy texture. So that's what we want to be achieving. Okay, right, once your dough is nicely kneaded, you're going to turn it out onto your work surface, and you might need to add a little bit of flour, and you're going to roll it out into a pizza shape. Now obviously pizzas are round. So in order to get a round base, you're going to turn your dough every few rolls so that you get that rounded shape. Now you can roll it out to fit the baking tray, and you can be as accurate as you wish, or you can be as homemade as you wish. So once you have got your pizza dough rolled out, you're then going to place it onto a baking tray, and it does need to have parchment on it. I'm going to try and get it to fit. There we go. If a little bit comes over the edge, that's okay. Once you've got it on your baking tray, you are then able to add your toppings. So you start with the tomato base. Some of you might want to be adventurous, and you can use pesto as a base, or you could use a chili base or a basic tomato base. Use the back of the spoon to make sure that you cover your pizza dough with it. But what I will say is you don't want to go to the very edge, because otherwise the tomato sauce will burn, and that's not a very nice, pleasant thing. So once you've got your tomato base, you're going to add some cheese. And again, it can be a mixture of mozzarella, or it could be a mixture of cheddar cheese with that. You might need to grate your cheese first of all, or you can use ready grated cheese here. So make sure that's spread nicely over your pizza base. Okay, so you can put whatever kind of topping you like on your pizza. I would say that 5 is a maximum. And you might want to add things like peppers or mushrooms. You might want some salamis or chorizo, some olives, some more cheese, whatever you really like. Now, I've got a pepper here, so I'm going to show you how you might want to cut your pepper up carefully to go on the top. So what I'm going to do with this green pepper is I'm going to use the claw position, and I'm going to cut off just a small cheek of the pepper, like that. And I'm going to then use the claw position again and cut my pepper into strips. Now, with some pizzas, and if you do like pepper, you can cut it into really nice thin strips, which is absolutely fine. Or in the case of what I'm going to do, is have little diced bits of pepper. So once I cut it into strips, I again use the claw position, bringing my fingers back. I cut my pepper up into nice, even diced shapes. So I shall be sprinkling that on in a moment. If you want to use something like a mushroom, to cut up a mushroom, you're going to use the claw position, and you're going to take off the stem, and then you're going to cut it using the claw position again, bringing your fingers back into slices like so. Watch that they don't escape. So once you have done that, you're going to then put your fillings on your pizza, and you can do that in whatever way you choose. Okay, so girls and boys, you should have now added all your topping to your pizza, and on top of your toppings I've also added a little bit of herbs and a little bit more olive oil, just to enhance that Italian flavour. So that then goes into the oven, and we will have a look at it when we bring it out.